The sun was shining. The ocean breeze was calm. But somewhere in the heart of Mexico, danger was creeping closer. Meech thought he had escaped the heat back home, but what he didn't know was that the storm had just crossed the border with him. This ain't just another BMF episode. This is the one that flips everything upside down. Asterisk the sun was shining. The ocean breeze was calm. But somewhere in the heart of Mexico, danger was creeping closer. Meech thought he had escaped the heat back home, but what he didn't know was that the storm had just crossed the border with him. This ain't just another BMF episode. This is the one that flips everything upside down. Asterisk section 1. Setup and backstory context leading up to episode 7 asterisk. After the chaos of episode 6, Meech had one thing on his mind: survival. Everything in Detroit was falling apart. His network was crumbling. People were switching sides. And worse, someone close had started talking. That kind of betrayal doesn't just burn. It puts you in a coffin or a cage. Meech knew he had to disappear fast. So he did what any boss with resources would do. He vanished. Asterisk, but he didn't go alone. Asterisk Loco, one of the most unpredictable members of his inner circle, tagged along. Some say Meech brought Loco for protection. Others think he didn't trust him enough to leave him behind. Either way, the two of them were now in Mexico, far from the cold streets of Detroit, living like kings in a city that didn't know their faces yet. Asterisk, let's rewind a little though. How did it come to this? Asterisk, in the previous episodes, the BMF crew had been dealing with rising pressure from the feds, rivals moving in on territory, and tensions boiling within their own ranks. Meech had been trying to expand operations into new states, while also keeping law enforcement off his back. It was like trying to juggle fire. Eventually, something was going to burn. Asterisk, by episode 6, things had gone too far. A routine shipment got intercepted. A known snitch gave up critical info. There were whispers of a warrant with Meech's name on it. He had two choices: turn himself in and fight the case, or disappear and regroup. We already know Meech. He never folds. So he took the smarter route: disappear. Asterisk, but what he didn't count on was how dirty Loco really was. Asterisk, see, Loco wasn't just along for the ride. He had his own problems back in the States. People were looking for him too, not just the cops, but old enemies. He owed money, made promises he couldn't keep, and had burned bridges with people Meech didn't even know existed. In the beginning, Meech thought keeping Loco close was a way to control the risk, but the truth, Loco brought heat with him. Heat that would eventually light up all of Mexico. Asterisk, once they landed in the country, things looked smooth. They kept a low profile, moved between rentals, used fake names, and avoided luxury spots that might attract attention. But slowly, the old habits kicked in. Money started flowing, parties started happening, and people started noticing. Asterisk, they were supposed to be hiding. Instead, they were making noise. Asterisk, Meech, always the strategist, had set up a few connections south of the border. Nothing major, just enough to keep the money flowing and maybe set up a new pipeline if things worked out. Loco, on the other hand, didn't have patience. He started moving heavy, talking big, and hanging out with people that didn't know the BMF code. And the problem with Mexico is this: everybody's watching, whether it's the local gangs, the cartel, or the federal police. If you look like money, somebody's going to come knocking. Asterisk, and that's exactly what happened. Asterisk, word got around that two Americans were in town, flashy, secretive, and carrying more cash than sense. It didn't take long before that info landed in the wrong ears. And whether it was a paid tip, a coincidence, or karma catching up, the path Meech had taken to escape was about to lead him straight into a trap. Asterisk, back home, people were starting to panic. Rumors spread fast. Some said Meech had skipped the country for good. Others believed he was setting up a brand new empire. But those who knew the game well could sense it. Something wasn't right. You don't just disappear like that unless you're running from something bigger than the streets. Asterisk by the end of this first section, one thing is crystal clear. Meech and Loco didn't just leave Detroit. They brought all their problems with them. And now episode 7 is where everything comes to a head. Asterisk the escape is over. The real story is just beginning. Asterisk at first glance, Mexico looked like freedom. Meech and Loco arrived like shadows, quiet, careful, and strategic. They didn't hit the tourist spots or go flashy right away. Their phones were wiped, IDs fake, they were ghosts. And ghosts don't get caught. Asterisk, but here's the thing about ghosts. They still leave trails if they're not careful. Asterisk, after a few weeks on the ground, the pressure started to ease. No calls from Detroit, no feds knocking at the door, no enemies chasing them down, just warm weather, cold drinks, and unfamiliar streets. It almost felt like peace. Asterisk, but peace makes people sloppy and loco. He was never built to move quiet. Asterisk C. Meech had a plan. Keep it low, build slow. Use Mexico as a place to regroup, maybe even connect with a few trusted suppliers to keep the BMF brand alive. Underground, but still breathing. He wasn't trying to rebuild an empire overnight. He was trying to buy time. Asterisk Loco, though, had different ideas. Asterisk he saw Mexico as a shortcut, a land of opportunity. To him, it wasn't about laying low, it was about expanding faster than ever. He started making his own connections, low-level dealers, party promoters, even corrupt police officers. People that could get you what you want fast. But always with a price. Asterisk at first, Meech let him cook. Maybe it was trust, maybe it was just distraction. But before long, Loco's actions were drawing attention, and not the kind you want in a foreign country. Asterisk they were moving cash again. Small at first, street-level money enough to test the waters. But that kind of money talks, and in Mexico, money talks loud. Suddenly, new people were popping up, middlemen with cartel ties. Local gang members offering protection, crooked. Officials asking quiet questions. Asterisk, and if there's one rule Meech lived by, it's this. When the streets start asking about you, it's already too late. Asterisk it got worse when Loco started showing off. Nights out turned into week-long parties, expensive drinks, flashy women. Instagram lives under fake names, but with real locations. He didn't realize that it's not just the feds who monitor social media, cartels do too. Enemies do. Snitches definitely do. Asterisk and somewhere in that noise. Someone picked up on something. Asterisk maybe it was a face they recognized. Maybe it was the way Loco talked, like he owned something that wasn't his, whoever it was. The whispers started to Americans running money. Connected to something bigger, the kind of whispers that travel fast and hit hard. Asterisk Meech started noticing the changes too. A car following them one night. A hotel clerk asking too many questions. A random officer recognizing a face he shouldn't. It was all too familiar. And it hit him. They weren't invisible anymore. Asterisk he tried to tighten things up, move again, switch phones, change routines. But the damage was done. Loco had moved too recklessly, and now they were exposed. Asterisk one night, Meech confronted Loco. In their rental villa, a quiet house near the coast. Asterisk greater than you think this is a game. You think we're still in Detroit. Asterisk Loco brushed it off, said he had it under control. That everything was just business. But Meech saw it in his eyes. Loco wasn't thinking 3 steps ahead. He was barely thinking 1. Asterisk at that point, Meech started making his own exit strategy. He quietly reached out to an old contact, someone who owed him a favor from back in the day. He started stacking money to move again, maybe south to Colombia, or back into the States through a quieter border. He wasn't sure yet, but he knew he couldn't stay much longer. Asterisk what Meech didn't know was that while he was planning a clean break, someone else was already setting the trap. Asterisk the local police had started building a quiet case. Not enough for headlines, not enough to speak them. Just enough to watch and wait. They weren't alone either. Word had reached a U.S. task force tracking cross-border movement of high-level traffickers. They didn't need a case from scratch. They just needed a location. And now they had it. Every move Meech and Loco made was being logged. Phone pings, financial drops, rental agreements. Even the street food spot they hit every Tuesday. It was part of the surveillance. They had no idea how close the net had gotten. By now, Meech felt it in his gut. Something was off. The air felt heavy. Too many new faces in the neighborhood. Too many glances held just a second too long. And for a man like Meech, that gut feeling. That survival instinct. But the problem was, it was already too late. As we lead into the next section, the stage is set for one of the most dramatic turns in BMF Season 4. The paradise is officially over. And as the sun rises over Mexico, so do the sirens. It happened fast. No warning. No second chances. One moment, Meech was sitting on the balcony of their rented villa, sipping his coffee like it was just another calm Mexican morning. The next, that calm was shattered by the sound of tires screeching, radios crackling, and boots slamming against pavement. They were surrounded. It started just after 6 a.m., the kind of hour where even the streets are still waking up. Meech had just come back from a quiet walk, his daily ritual to clear his head. Loco was still passed out on the couch, half-dressed, phone buzzing from a wild night before. Then came the knock. But this wasn't no regular knock. It was hard, rhythmic, tactical. You could tell by the sound of it, this was law enforcement. Meech's instincts kicked in instantly. He ducked, moved to the side window, and took a quick peek. What he saw confirmed everything his gut had been screaming for days. Black SUVs with no plates, men in body armor with rifles. Local police uniforms. Mixed with unmarked vests. And worst of all, one man holding up a U.S. badge. The D had arrived. He turned to Loco, who was now wide-eyed and frozen in panic, and barked, "Get rid of the phones, now!" But there was no time. Within seconds, the front door flew open, not kicked, blown off the hinges. The room filled with Spanish commands, laser sights, and shouting. Two agents pinned Loco to the floor as he screamed, "I'm not armed." One of them slammed a knee into his back and zip-tied his hands. Meech didn't resist. He knew there was no point. Hands in the air, face calm. He locked eyes with the lead agent. Quiet, controlled, but inside, he was doing the math, who gave them up. How long had they been watched? Was this about Detroit or something else? As they dragged him out the front door, neighbors peered through curtains. A few even filmed. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the dirt road, and in that moment, Meech realized something deep. He didn't escape. He walked right into the lion's den. They were placed into two separate vehicles. No talking, no answers. Just tight zip ties, dark windows, and the hum of the engine. Loco kept whispering, "This can't be happening, bro. This can't be happening." He looked like a man unraveling. Like all the tough talk and gold chains meant nothing now. Meech didn't say a word. He just stared straight ahead. They weren't taken to a local precinct. That would have been too easy. Instead, they were driven an hour outside the city to a secure facility, quiet, isolated, government-run. The kind of place where the rules blur and deals are made in the shadows. The interrogations started almost immediately. Loco cracked first. He wasn't built for this. No lawyer, no backup, just bright lights, a translator, and two agents tossing photos and names on the table. He swore he didn't know anything, swore he wasn't part of anything big. But they had files, thick ones, with pictures, wiretaps, addresses from back home. This wasn't a fishing trip. Asterisk, this was a calculated takedown. Asterisk, Meech's interrogation was different, cold, strategic. No yelling. No threats. Just quiet pressure. Asterisk, greater than we know who you are. Asterisk, we've been tracking BMF for years. Asterisk, you made it harder this time. But not hard enough. Asterisk, Meech didn't blink. He didn't admit, he didn't fold. He just sat there, watching them, calculating. Because for Meech, even when the walls are closing in, the mind stays working. Asterisk, but deep down, he knew this was worse than anything he'd faced before. Asterisk, back in the States, word spread fast. Someone from the crew got a call from a cousin in Mexico. Footage of the arrest leaked online, blurry, shaky, but clear enough to tell it was them. The BMF phones lit up. People panicked. Questions flew. Asterisk, is Meech really locked up? Asterisk, did Loco talk? Asterisk, what does this mean for the rest of us? Asterisk, some stayed loyal. Others started moving funny. And a few started looking for ways to disappear to dot asterisk. Meanwhile, inside that Mexican facility, the pressure kept building. Asterisk, Loco asked for a deal. Asterisk, Meech refused to speak. Dot asterisk, to very different reactions to the same storm. Dot asterisk, authorities made it clear they were holding them for extradition. The plan, ship them back to the U.S., where fresh federal indictments were waiting, connected not just to their past actions, but also the new evidence gathered in Mexico. Asterisk, but there's a twist. Mexico's legal system doesn't move fast. Asterisk, there are loopholes, processes, and politics involved. So while their extradition was approved, it wasn't immediate. Which meant, for now, they'd both be locked up in a high-security holding center just outside the city. A place built for high-value criminals, not street-level dealers. Asterisk, and just like that, Meech and Loco went from running the game to sitting in matching jumpsuits behind concrete walls, speaking to no one, while the world waited to see what would happen next. Asterisk, would Meech find a way out? Asterisk, would Loco survive long enough to testify? Asterisk, or would the entire BMF empire fall one piece at a time? Asterisk, the answers aren't clear yet. But what's certain is this. Asterisk, episode 7 changed everything. Asterisk, the arrest of Meech and Loco in Mexico didn't just shake their world. It sent a ripple through every layer of the BMF empire. From top-tier players to street-level runners, the moment news broke, people started moving differently. Asterisk, phones got smashed. Cash got moved. Old associates ghosted like they'd never known them. It wasn't loyalty that held this game together. It was fear. And now that the face of the empire was behind bars in a foreign country, that fear turned into full-blown panic. Asterisk, let's start with what was happening on the inside. Asterisk, Meech and Loco were being held in a maximum security detention center designed for narcos, not tourists. No private cells, no VIP treatment, just cold concrete, loud noise, and too many eyes watching. In a place like that, it doesn't matter who you were back home. You're just another number. Another target. Asterisk, for Meech, survival became about discipline. He kept his circle tight, observed everything, said little. Even behind bars, he was reading people like the streets, knowing who to trust, who to avoid, and most of all, how to stay alive long enough to get out. Asterisk, Loco, on the other hand, was cracking. Paranoia, outbursts. He started pacing the cell blocks, talking to himself, picking fights over food and space. Rumors spread that he had started talking to authorities. Nothing confirmed, but in the game they played, even a rumor like that could get a man killed. Asterisk, word made its way back to Detroit. Asterisk, and that's where the real damage started. Asterisk, see, Meech getting arrested was one thing. The empire could have survived the temporary hit, lie low, keep the money flowing slow, and wait for the boss to come home. But if Loco was really talking, that meant names, routes, stash spots, deals, all of it was in danger. That wasn't just bad news, That was a full-blown collapse waiting to happen. Asterisk within days, BMF associates started cutting ties. Some dipped out of town, others flipped their phones and lawyered up. A few even reached out to enemies, trying to trade loyalty for safety. It was chaos. Asterisk the leadership back home, those who were still free, had to make a decision. Do they wait to see what Meech pulls off, or do they start rebuilding without him? Asterisk some said Meech would beat the charges, that he'd find a loophole, pay off the right people, and be back in no time, but others, they weren't so sure. Especially not with U.S. federal agents involved. Asterisk, and that brings us to the legal side of things. Asterisk behind closed doors, the DA had been quietly building a new federal case against the BMF. Mexico was just the final piece. Now they had proof of international movement, financial trails, fresh testimony, allegedly from someone close to Meech. Asterisk, that meant they could hit the organization with RICO charges, the kind that stick. Asterisk, Meech's lawyers moved fast. They filed paperwork to delay the extradition, arguing that the arrest was based on weak intel, but the clock was ticking. U.S. prosecutors weren't going to wait forever. They wanted Meech back on American soil and in front of a judge. Asterisk, as for Loco, asterisk, there were whispers that he'd been offered a deal. Reduced time for information, no identity, fresh start. The kind of deal that only gets offered to people who know everything. Asterisk, but the streets don't forget. Asterisk, word of a snitch travels fast. And if Loco ever stepped foot back in the U.S., his face would be recognized by more than just the law. Asterisk, meanwhile, Meech was playing the long game. Asterisk, in prison, he started connecting with inmates who had legal experience, former lawyers, jailhouse experts. He studied, learned, made moves quietly. This wasn't about ego. It was about staying alive and staying ready. Asterisk, because deep down, Meech knew something important. Asterisk, greater than empires don't die with arrests. They die when the leader loses his mind. Asterisk, and his mind, it was sharp, focused. Every hour inside that cell was another step toward freedom or revenge. Asterisk, but freedom wasn't promised. Asterisk, back in Detroit, the BMF name still carried weight, but the crown was up for grabs. Rival crews were testing boundaries, old enemies were circling. The streets were waiting to see who would step up next or if the empire would fall apart without its king. Asterisk, and that's where BMF season 4 episode 7 leaves us. Asterisk, not with a full ending, but with a storm still brewing. Asterisk, Meech behind bars in a foreign country. Asterisk, Loco cracking under pressure, possibly flipping. Asterisk, Detroit in disarray, and the feds ready to pounce. Asterisk, so what's next? Asterisk, will Meech escape extradition? Asterisk, will BMF survive without him? Asterisk, and most importantly, who's the next target? Asterisk, the game's changed now. The rules are different. And as the credits roll on episode 7, one thing is clear. Asterisk, this ain't the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. Asterisk,